It's my pleasure to introduce Vanessa for the next presentation. Vanessa joined the West Midlands Police in 1993 and has held a variety of positions, including Senior Investigating Officer in the Force CID Department, overseeing firearms offences, kidnaps and attempted murders, and then in the Public Protection Unit, overseeing complex child abuse cases throughout the Black Country. Throughout her career, Vanessa has been committed to crime prevention. As Detective Superintendent, Vanessa took over as Managing Director of the West Midlands Cyber Resilience Centre in 2021. Her mission is to reach as many businesses as possible to help them in becoming more cyber secure through a partnership of business, academia and law enforcement. I'll now hand over to Vanessa. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the picture that we have across England and Wales is that a lot of small, micro, solo trader businesses think that they won't be the victims of cyber attacks because they don't have much spare cash. And that's understandable. But as some of you are experts in the room will know, data is the new gold and it's really worthwhile. So a lot of businesses have got a lot of data, whether they think they have or not, whether it's contact details, bank details, transactions, orders. They've got a lot of information, whether that's details of their customers, their clients, their staff, their own details. So data is very valuable to cyber attackers. And what we find is that there are some cyber attackers who will steal that data. They will then go and sell it on the dark web. On the dark web, I don't know how many of the audience have been on there. It's a murky world where you can buy many things from rape kits to firearms to drugs to fraud details so that you can then go and commit frauds yourself. And that's exactly what happens with the data. It's sold to somebody else who will then do scams on people and businesses. And what we found across the region, the Mayor spoke about this recently, that the West Midlands area has got one of the highest birth rates of businesses outside of London, which is fantastic. However, unfortunately, it's got one of the highest rates of those businesses collapsing within 3 years, which it's disproportionately high. And what we're finding is that cyber attacks can be quite commonplace, a reason why a business goes under. Not only is your business affected, but your reputation is affected irrevocably. So, as I say, a lot of small businesses will think that they're not at risk, that they don't have much cash, but just reiterating there that names, addresses, identification documents. We're even finding that education is a high target area. If you think about it, if you can get the name, date of birth, address, parents' details of a child who's 10 years old, you could potentially follow that child for the next 70 years. If you find out that they've got special education needs, if you find their passport details as proof of identification, this is invaluable information that you could use and abuse on that individual for 70 years. That's really valuable, isn't it, if you're desire is to rip off or abuse somebody in that sort of scenario. So there's some facts here. The government in 2016 graded cyber attacks as a tier 1 national security threat. And that's because there are some states who will attack our organisations. They want to improve their GDPR and they're happy if it affects ours and reduces ours. So that's what they've done. So we're working in partnership. So a lot of businesses will say that they don't work online, but a lot of businesses have got maybe a desktop if they're traditional and large, but they'll have a laptop, they'll have devices. More and more people have got 2 or maybe 3 devices. I've got 2 and I'm not funky or groovy. Lots of people have got more than 1 mobile phone. A lot of people have got either iPads or mobility devices or they've got laptops. So a lot of people are working online. What we're also finding is that businesses who say, oh, I don't work online. Well, do you know what? How do you do your bank banking? How do you send your invoices out? How do you do your tax return? I don't know nobody has ever said, I do my tax return on paper form. I know it can happen, but it's extremely rare. I actually found myself thinking the other day, right, okay, well, let's think of a business where they really don't work online. So I went really extreme. I thought, come on, Vanessa, pull it out of the bag. So I thought, okay, well, let's think about a grave digger. I mean, that's a very manual task. Important, really important. But how does that grave digger know how many graves they've got to dig tomorrow and where to do it and what time those graves are needed by? And how is that grave digger going to receive any more updates or information from their boss and get paid? So everybody does something online. It's a rarity where you're not working online. But what we're finding is that cyber attackers will go through small, micro, solo trader businesses to get into the larger organisations. So sometimes supply chains are seen as the low-hanging fruit, the easy way in. Larger organisations are therefore saying we want better standards from our supply chains. So a lot of organisations will say, it's all right, I've got business insurance, but you're not going to be working out of that building for a long time. A lot of people will say, I've got cyber insurance. Well, first of all, cyber insurance is becoming more and more difficult month in, month out to get. Cyber Essentials is one of the standards that a lot of businesses are saying that you've got to have. But also I was told about one cyber insurance company who was saying, actually, if you have our insurance, they had the writing at the bottom of the contract. We all know it. We all fall pitfall to it. And it said, if you have any dealings with anything connected to China, we will not pay out. Well, it's pretty darn difficult not to have any connections with China in this day and age, whether you like it or not. But you're not going to be doing anything on that device for a long time, if ever. The corruption of that device might be so severe, of your website, all of your systems, that you may be affected irrevocably. So I'm just going to whiz through some of this information. The WannaCry attack in 2017, obviously over half of the NHS trusts were affected. There were 1,200 pieces of diagnostic equipment affected. So this is your IT versus OT. So this is when you've got devices where you have to program them to get going. So I did an input at the Three Counties Showground about a year and a half ago. The agricultural sector really are a tough crowd. But what's really important to know is that actually a combine harvester, you don't just put it in first gear and drive. You've got to program lots into it. A milking parlour, I never knew of a thing until I started researching the agricultural sector. But a milking parlour, you've got to keep your milk at the right temperature. You've got to make sure that the gates allow the cows in and allow them back out. You've all seen the Bird's Eye advert for peas. They're picked just in time and frozen just in time. Well, if that freezing temperature is not the right temperature, you're going to lose a whole crop of peas. So you must make sure that all of your equipment where you have to program it is kept cyber safe, because otherwise that equipment where you're thinking, it's just a bit of industrial machinery, well, it won't work. And so your business is affected. So some of the latest crime trends across the West Midlands region. Sadly, only 4% of cyber attacks are actually reported, and most of those are not on businesses. Those are on individuals. So your romance fraud or stalking through online tactics, or it's online enabled, cyber enabled. And yet there are many obligations if you have a cyber attack. If information is stolen from you, then you must inform the ICO, and so they would recommend that you report it to the police. So there's massive underreporting. Phishing attacks account for about 80%. So the vast majority of cyber attacks are through phishing emails to start off with. So that's where they'll start. Now, sometimes you'll get a phishing attack and the malware will just sit there nice and quiet, and it will wait for the right time to then enact what it wants to do. So if you're a tiny business and that malware is just sitting there ready to be clicked into action, it could be that it does that when you've got a big contract with a big business, and it'll go through you to get into that big business. So what we also found is that COVID pushed a lot of work to remote sort of locations. People were able to work at home, which was splendid. We were able to keep going, thank goodness. But the security that you've got on people's devices when they're at home, are you sure about that? Do you know what their Wi-Fi is like? Is it secure? Are they using their own devices as a shortcut where you've got no security mechanisms, no policies? Okay, so who commits cyber attacks then? So there's bitter ex-employees. Do not underestimate these. These are some of the few people where we will investigate and we can sometimes find those offenders. Because if you think about it, if you've got cyber attackers and they're over in Russia or China, we're not going to be able to arrest our way out of that. We can't bring people in who are on suspicion of murder from somewhere like Russia. So we ain't going to get them for a $5,000 cyber attack. Teenagers with nothing better to do. I don't like to demonise teenagers. They have a hard time in the press, especially at the hands of like the Daily Mail and other papers. So I don't like to do that. But you know what? These days, a teenager on a Friday night is not going to play Sudoku or Wordle. And they definitely ain't going to be watching Strictly Come Dancing or whatever else is on the TV on a Friday night. This week, they've decided to become vegan and they're going to attack the local butchers. Or they're pro-life and they're going to attack the local medical centre because they give out the morning pill. Or actually, they're really cheesed off with Christmas because they didn't get what they wanted. So they're going to attack the website for the local church. So teenagers who are really cheesed off sometimes will do this because it's a laugh. It's great fun. I don't like the title of the next category. Disenfranchised keyboard warriors. They're not keyboard warriors. They're not warriors of any shape or form. They're snide people who sit in their smelly bedsits and create havoc and damage to hard-working people like yourselves. However, they're a category. Fraudsters, as you know, international fraudsters. A lot of cyber attacks will come from afar. Anarchists. So when I joined the police in '93, anarchy, yeah, it was dodging soap and it was hugging trees. It's not the case anymore. Shell will suffer cyber attacks at the hands of anarchists morning, noon, and night. So your anarchists are upgrading their tactics, so you need to be careful. And then obviously you've got your state actors. The attack on the Ukraine by Russia. I was speaking to a very, very large organisation and they had a charity event to raise money for Ukraine. During that charity event, they were suffering cyber attacks approximately every 15 minutes. And they didn't get into the main venue. They didn't get into the main events. But what they did do is they managed to get into a sister company, their kitchen supply ordering web. And as a result, that kitchen couldn't sort of order food for a few days. But the major event went on. So that's a classic example of your supply chains or your sort of very distant linked organisations being the low-hanging fruit.
There are all sorts of people and organisations who might wish to target you. Let's start with the most common, cyber criminals, who will target any organisation, large or small. They might try and steal money, hold your systems and information to ransom, or steal sensitive data that they can sell on. The term cyber criminals covers a wide range of people, from self-taught amateurs to highly organised and resourced criminal groups. The most capable but less likely threat to your organisation is from hostile foreign governments. They normally have a more specific target in mind and are not usually motivated by money. It's more likely that will be aiming to acquire sensitive information that could provide a political or strategic advantage, to steal intellectual property that could provide economic advantage, or to try and test new cyber attack methods, or test the defences of their targets. Even if you don't think you're of interest to a foreign government, you should understand the value you might represent. Perhaps you have access to other large organisations who are their main target, or you have information that could help them carry out such attacks. Foreign governments are generally more capable than criminals and will put a considerable effort into achieving their objectives, but even they will start with the easiest methods first. So taking basic defensive measures will help make you a harder target. Other groups that may attack you include activists, out to prove a point for political or ideological reasons, for instance to expose or discredit your organisation's activities. Terrorist organisations, interested in spreading propaganda and disruption activities, they generally have less technical capabilities. Finally, there's insiders, so your employees or recent leavers who may have extensive access to sensitive information, networks and systems. An insider could be someone carrying out sophisticated corporate espionage, or it could simply be a disgruntled employee.
Okay, so the National Cyber Security Centre was set up. Now, I think you can all hear my Brummie accent. It's thick, it's strong, it ain't going nowhere, and it gets worse after a glass of Shiraz. So what I represent is the fact that actually, if London or the government give out some messaging, that's all good and well. But you know what? I'm a Brummie. I'm so sick of London going on about the big I am. And you know what? Actually, this week I've decided to vote Labour, so I'm not listening to anything that the Tories say. So what they decided to do was set up some regional cyber security centres, but we're called Resilliance centres. So that's the geography that I cover. It's the 4 police force areas in the West Midlands. So I cover the West Midlands police area, which is my home territory. I cover Warwickshire, Staffordshire and West Mercia. So we are a police-led, part Home Office funded and not-for-profit business. So police-led, I'm a detective superintendent and my deputy is a detective inspector. Part Home Office funded. The reason I say the word part, I'm no longer absolutely devastated about the worries that we had to start off with. But actually, it's really important that people realise I empathise with small businesses who have those money worries, because I woke up at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning every night for about 18 months thinking, how am I going to keep the lights on? So we're part Home Office funded. We're part of the government strategy and we're not for profit. So I'm a copper. My wages are paid. I'm not interested in persuading you to do anything that you shouldn't do. Actually, my core role, and it has been for 30 years, is to prevent crime. But on top of that, I'm really loyal to the region, so I want us to thrive. So we are a go-to organisation. The reason we run as a business is so that we could grow bit by bit, so that we could scale out our messaging and get it out to thousands and thousands of businesses. I've got a target of trying to get in touch with 9,000 businesses by 2025. I need your help. So I've got a long way to go. At the moment, we've got 750 free core members. So I've got a lot of people I want to talk with, but that's what I'm all about, trying to help businesses. So how does it work? What we recommend is that you join. Our free core membership means that you get free stuff. So templates, suggested policies and practices. You get a monthly half-hour consultation with my deputy. Damien knows her. She's absolutely delightful. You can talk about your concerns because, you know, let's call it out as it is. There's not many people who go down the pub on a Friday night and talk about cyber security. It's not really the done thing. Believe me, I've done it, and my husband rolls his eyes, and rightly so. But you also don't go and go to a Costa or a Starbucks on a Wednesday morning and have a cup of tea and a muffin and start talking about cyber concerns. If you go to the private sector, you might be worried, are they going to tell you the right things? But if you come to a copper, the chances are they are trustworthy, hopefully, and they will give you the right advice. So that's what we're about. You get the free core membership. We do a couple of networking events. We've got one in November, which is at the Police Museum in Birmingham. So it'll be quirky, it'll be a little bit different. Join for free and you can come along. Hashtag I'm just saying. So we then get you to do the 10 easy steps. Free stuff, which I will canter through shortly, just so you get a flavour. And then we recommend that you, if you've got any gaps that you are able to look at some of the services that we provide. You get Cyber Essentials, and then it's the blue star on your right-hand side. You become a supply chain of choice because you are showing that you are trustworthy with other people's information and data. So that's some of the stuff that we do. We do the exercise in a box from NCSC, but we make it understandable. NCSC is great, but it's quite jargonistic. There's a lot of acronyms and technical stuff. And frankly, if you're a florist or you're a joiner, a professional joiner, you're not going to understand what they're saying and it just turns you off. And there's monthly newsletters and other stuff. So these I am going to whiz through. If anybody wants a summary of these, I can share them at the end. So back up your data, really important. It's good housekeeping. If you suffered a cyber attack, you need to prioritise what data you've got. You're not interested in the menu from last year's Christmas do and the attendee list. You want your customer and your client details and your staff details kept secure. So good data housekeeping. Passwords, protect from malware. So I can't tell you which one of these to go on to or whether to go on to a different one. because I'm a copper and you might want to try and sue me. So I can't even say go onto Google and research what's best for you because you might get that wrong. So I would say go onto a great search engine and research what's best for you. Okay, keep your IT up to date. As I said, I've had money worries for the business. I don't underestimate this, but the older your IT equipment is, the more vulnerable you are because you don't get upgrades, you don't get those patches that keep you secure. Encryption. This is a real Janet John example, but it shows you a little bit about what encryption is like. So if a cyber attacker does get into your system and they see what's on the right-hand side, they will literally drop it, not bother, and go on to the next low-hanging fruit. Okay? This gives me the heebie-jeebies. Please be very, 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 very careful with memory sticks. It's a little bit like putting a virus into your laptop sometimes. A common tactic by cyber attackers is they'll leave a memory stick on the floor and you'll probably look at it and think, oh, what a shame. Somebody's hard work is on there. I'll stick it in my laptop and find out who owns it. Bosher. You've then put, metaphorically, viruses or a cancer into your laptop and you're in for a whole heap of pain. So keep your devices safe. So be really careful about physical security of your devices. Some people use the air tags. There's other ways that you can do that. Public Wi-Fi, if it's free public Wi-Fi and they don't change the password every day, you are vulnerable to what's called a man-in-the-middle attack, where basically somebody could sit there in Starbucks and they look like they're reading a magazine, but actually they're having a look at what buttons you're tapping on your laptop, and then they know what you're doing, they know your passwords, they're in. Password managers. So I know this was mentioned earlier on. So in relation to password managers, again, I can't recommend one. So 3 random words is the advice, with some capitals, some lowercase and some special symbols. But password managers will make it a little bit easier for you. Have a think about it. Research on a search engine and see what's best for your organisation. And then phishing attacks. As I said earlier on, about 80% of attacks come through phishing emails. And this is where you need to make sure that you and your staff are trained. It's one of the most popular services that we sell to businesses is the security awareness training for staff. So they learn what not to click onto. What we find is that because we give them some really good information about their own cyber security for their own social media accounts, they become really good and really interested and they become your eyes and ears, and then they're on board. So just think about that, training your staff. And then supply chains, as I've mentioned, they are the low-hanging fruit. And that's where a lot of cyber attackers will try and get in. So these are some of the services that we do sell. These are very affordable in comparison with some of the private sector, and they are affordable because what we do is our partnership with academia is we use cyber degree students. We train them to do certain services. And then we have them supervised by cyber seniors. I never knew this until recently, but a cyber senior apparently can earn well over 100 grand a year. I'm clearly in the wrong role. But what they do is they supervise these students, and they supervise them to within an inch of their lives. They're not allowed to turn up to a business in jeans and flip-flops and go, hey, dude. It's a very professional setup. One of the previous students from the CyberPath programme last night won a national award for being the Cyber Student of the Year. And she was one of the West Mid Cyber students, a lady called Sophie. So that's on LinkedIn. So they're very good. But also, this is holistically beneficial for the region. Anybody who's in the IT business knows that trying to get cybersecurity resources and recruit is really difficult. We're trying to make sure that these students on the programme are employable the minute they walk out of university with their degree. And actually what we're finding is they are, and they're getting very competitive jobs because of the evidence and the experience they've got. Cyber Essentials, it's a government-backed scheme. It's a way of proving that you are taking cyber security seriously. The difference between Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus, Cyber Essentials Plus, you are assessed. For Cyber Essentials on its own, you do a self-assessment. So it's a good way of stepping into cybersecurity. But the impact on your business if you suffer a cyber attack is irrevocable. So I was approached by a chap over in the Black Country, and he was explaining that he's a photographer. His wife does all the admin, and they have, I never knew this happened, but he said they have a boutique section for ladies who want to feel good about themselves. And he says they've set up a room in their house, and they've got a special website, and that has been taken over by hackers. So those hackers have got access to some saucy pictures, and they've got access to details, but he cannot access the details. He cannot access that side of the website. And as a result, his business is going down week by week by week, because who's going to go along and have their photographs taken by him? Who's going to have their wedding photographs taken by him? Because you'll lose those photographs forever, or your child's christening, or their first Ramadan, or whatever. This is the irrevocable damage that happens to your business reputation. Okay, so we've got an example here. This is an example of an investigation. So there was an organisation, a large organisation, that suffered a cyber attack, and that they were contacted and told that their records had been deleted. So they get a message. We have all your company data. We have control of your network. We have control of your phones. So that was a message that the boss received, the IT director. So they contact the police. They confirm that the data deletion is actually even worse than they initially thought. They really are in for a whole heap of pain. They are really worried about this. About 2/3 of their functions are unable to operate. They cannot rebuild the operating systems because, unfortunately, their backup data has also been stolen. So they decide to contact all their staff and say, have you got any stuff? Have you saved anything? Just by, don't worry, you shouldn't have been saving it. Have you got anything? And they all said no. And then they contacted some previous staff. And one of them said, well, yeah, but you're going to have to pay you 500 quid. So I'm sure you can imagine they started to think, something's amiss. So they contact the police again. And the police do some of their magical stuff. And I'm not at liberty to share with you all of the tactics that we do because it's restricted information. But what they do is they get some information, and they get some evidence, and they put the door in, as old-fashioned coppers would say. So they execute a warrant is the way we should word it. So they go in and they search a suspect's flat. Bedsit, yeah. Do you remember what I said about keyboard warriors? So they go into his house and they search, and they find a laptop that's been tucked away in a really random location. And they're thinking, I think we're on to our suspect. And then they have a look at some of his searches on Google. So TeamViewer was one of the ways that he committed his cyber attack. How to damage a computer without evidence. So this is all on his Google search record. I'm not really technically strong, but even I know that you delete that because you might get caught out. Disgruntled employee revenge. What a search, eh? And then the most ironic one, obviously, is how to delete search history on Google. If only he'd learned his own lesson. Obviously they've got the right chap, and so they prosecute. He was given a fine, a suspended sentence under the Computer Misuse Act. But what you've got to realise is the damage that was done to the reputation of that organisation. I spoke to an IT provider about 4 or 5 months ago. He actually visited me in Lloyd House. I think he wanted the kudos of saying that he'd been into West Mids Police Headquarters. So we sat down chewing the fat about a number of things. And he said to me that he'd briefed all of his staff. He said, you know what, we provide IT. We're not into cyber security. We provide IT. And he said that he warned his staff that they've all got to be on the lookout for phishing attacks, because if they get a cyber attack, they could hopefully get back up and running at a cost of thousands and thousands. They could get back up and running within about 2 to 3 weeks' time. But he said to them, mark my words, within 18 months, this business will have gone under, because every 12 months, businesses are supposed to renew their contracts. And they will go elsewhere because our reputation is shattered, which is why prevention is just so very important. So I don't think I'm going to be able to bring this up, unfortunately. I don't suppose, are you able to click on that top link? No? Okay, all right. If anybody wants to have a look, so the cyber threat map, it's mildly interesting in the world of cyber security. And what it shows is the number of cyber attacks that happen every day. And it's a flat map of the world. And you see attacks going here, there, and everywhere. So America to Jerusalem, Spain to Spain, China to Mexico, and it's all over the world. So some people call it the ping map. It shows the sectors that are most often targeted. So one of the sectors is the education department sector. Do you remember what I said? If you get the credentials of a 10-year-old kid, you could keep them for 70 years and prey on that person. So the education sector is targeted a lot, as are government organisations, but also other sectors such as the financial sector, the law sector, because of all the data, the information they've got. So that's what happens. And it also gives some information about the number of cyber attacks that they think are happening on a day-to-day basis. And I had a look on there in closer detail. The average number of cyber attacks in a day is usually approximately 50 million cyber attacks in a day. And this is because with the beauty and the benefits of ChatGPT, cyber attackers can now automate their cyber attacks, and they are very, very convincing. So instead of sending out 50, they can send 10,000 out with just one press of the button. And I had a look at the day where they had the worst data breaches, the worst cyber attacks. 230 million cyber attacks just in one day. It only takes one to penetrate your business and you're in for a whole heap of pain. And that's why we talk about prevention is better than cure. So the West Midlands Cyber Resilience Centre, WMCRC, you can research us safely on Google or any other search engines that you want to. We're there. We want to help businesses because our job is to prevent crime. And there you go. I've cantered through some of those slides. Thank you very much.